everyone, welcome to Wicked West Books. My name is Meg West, and today I'm going to be going over the best and the worst books that I read during the year of 2020. 2020 was not a good year for pretty much anyone, just a bad year all around, and it affected my reading to a fairly decent extent, I want to say. Didn't explore a whole lot of new books, particularly once the pandemic hit. I went with things that I knew I would enjoy quite a bit and things that would be very comfortable for me to read. So my best of and worst of are kind of lopsided on numbers, so I'm just going to talk about them both. So the first best of book that I want to talk about is Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson. This book came out at the end of the year. It is the fourth book in the Way of Kings series, the Stormlight Archives that is going on. Since it is the fourth book, I don't want to put anything really spoilery in here, but I could go through all of the characters and with sum up my feelings pretty much. You got Kaladin, and Shallan, and Adolin, and Navani, and Dalinar, and, you know, just all of the things that happen. I had a good time. I had a really good time getting there. Oh, and of course my favorite, always my favorite, is Pattern. I just really don't like Shallan, particularly in this book. But it's kind of fun to read a book where one of my favorite characters went to my least favorite character. So the next one I want to talk about is Dragon Bones and Dragon Blood by Patricia Briggs. This was a reread for me, but it is the first time I've reread them in probably a few years. I know that it's been a little while since I've read these, but these are fantastic. I got this book when I was in late middle school-ish, maybe high school, on accident. It's not the book that I meant to order, but I ordered it and paid for it because I felt bad for having a small bookstore order something and then saying, no, never mind, I don't want it. So I got it, and it's the second book. But they're really, really good because they are very just high fantasy, running around. They involve dragons. They involve tricking people into thinking that you're not who you are and figuring out who you are. And I love this duology, and there should always be more duologies on BookTube. That's just a feeling I have. I love duologies. There should always be more. The next one that I want to mention is Our Chemical Hearts by Crystal Sutherland. This is a YA book that I absolutely adored reading. It made me feel so many feelings, and I really greatly enjoyed this book. But I love the way that high school was portrayed, and I love the fact that sometimes happily ever afters aren't what a relationship is. And this book does a really good job of showing that that's okay. It's okay for the high school romance to potentially fall apart, and you can survive it and go on. And I needed this book when I was in high school. I did it okay by myself, but I loved this book. And the last book that I want to mention for the best reads of 2020 is Magic Bites by Alana Andrews. This is the first book in the Kate Daniels series, and I absolutely loved finding another urban fantasy world to dip into. I love the idea of like were-lion that's not explored enough. There are too many werewolves. Not that I have anything against werewolves, but I love that there's just way more variety in this world, and the romance is pretty adorable, and I absolutely adored Kate. Adored her. And she does not let no man save her. She's gonna save herself, and I absolutely adore that in a female character. So, you know, the only real downside to this is that I don't own all the books. I'm going to work on that because they're well worth it. I love it. I'm probably going to reread this entire series in a month or two. So yeah, now let's move on to the books that I did not enjoy reading this year. There are only 3 that I feel the need to mention. There was one series that I read that kind of fell on the lower end, but I wasn't reading it because I wanted something that would be completely engaging. I wanted something that I didn't have to engage with and could still follow all the way through, so I don't really feel it's fair to mention that one. But we're going to start off with Dr. Tatiana's Sex Advice to All Creation by Olivia Judson. I wanted to like this book, I really did, because the premise of it, where bugs, lions, all kinds of animals, right into a advice column to find out about a question that they have about their sex life, and we get to read this and learn about the sex life of all of these different critters. And it's okay if you read it kind of like a news columnist where one comes out a week, but if you sit down and try to actually just read the thing cover to cover, I got bored. I got so bored, and it got repetitive, and what was a nice quirk of giving us this information about these critters' sex lives is just, it turned very repetitive very quickly, and the knowledge stopped sticking in my head because it was something that was fun and interesting, and then it got turned kind of textbook, which I have a hard time holding on to information that is presented like a textbook, so sadly, I did not actually enjoy reading this book. The next one that I want to mention is Doesnt Bargain by Sherilyn Kenyon/McQueen. And I really, again, wanted to like this book. I wanted to like this whole book series, but the whole thing is just really falling flat to me. This is a paranormal romance book, and I didn't care about the romance in this one, and I should have, because it's the kind of romance that's right up my alley. It's my favorite kind of romance, but I didn't buy this one. Add to that in one of the sex scenes they're underwater and he's having to do her breathing for her because she's human and he's merman-ish, no tail, but he's doing her breathing and she gasps underwater, and there's no explanation on how she doesn't die. I mean, I can assume it's magic and that his magic works a different way than typical breathe mouth to mouth kind of thing, but it was distracting enough that I didn't enjoy not just that scene, but basically the whole book. And honestly, everything that's in this Dark Hunter series has gotten so repetitive as it goes along, and she's having a hard time finding new things. And I realize that her personal life is not great at the moment. I do realize that, but as a reader, I'm kind of disappointed with these books. Still love the League series, although the newest League book did also disappoint me because it felt more like a planner to me than a book. I think it was on my most disappointing reads last year. So I really hope that her life gets better and she goes back to writing the fantastic books that I fell in love with, but this one just wasn't it. And the third and final book I want to talk about in this video, in the part that it was the worst books I read during 2020, was actually the first book I read in 2020, and on Goodreads I gave it a 4-star review, and in retrospect, it didn't really deserve to be that high. It didn't, and I apologize, if this is someone's favorite book, but I was underwhelmed. And that book is What If It's Us by Becky Appertelli and Adam Silvera. This book is about a couple of high school aged boys who meet and fall in love, and this book was, to say the least, overhyped. Very, very overhyped. Less so now, but at the time, very much overhyped, and yeah, I thought it got off to a great start. I loved the premise for the plot, but then the romance itself was underwhelming, and the biggest issue I had with it is that it is a very obvious formula book. There's a formula of getting together, falling in love, having a fight, getting back together, and it followed that formula too obviously. Like, I get that formula is a lot of places because it works. I just wish it wasn't so obvious about following that formula. So it goes on my most disappointing reads for the year 2020. Which is sad because I really liked all of Adam Silvera's other books. I really liked them quite a bit. They Both Die at the End was amazing. but not quite so much What If It's Us. Let me know down below what was your best and worst read of the year, because I'm really curious to know what you really enjoyed and what you really did not. That's gonna be it for this video. If you guys enjoyed it, please give me a thumbs up and feel free to subscribe to my channel if you have not done so already. I post videos on Wednesday. Have a wicked day.